want to welcome you tonight and thank you for coming. This is a meeting for the Downtown Specific Plan to scope out the EIR. So the purpose of the meeting is to provide comments to staff and the EIR consultant on what should be studied in the document. Before we get started, I want to introduce the team who's working on it from the Planning Department. Francie Steffen, Planning Manager. Right. Rachel Kwok is our Environmental Planner. And Travis Page is also working on the project. He's an Associate Planner. So I'm going to quickly turn it over to the EIR consultant. His name is Dan Giroux. He's with AMAC, and he will lead us through the discussion.
Thanks, David. Thanks, everybody, for coming tonight. I just wanted to go over a few basic issues for the hearing tonight. The purpose of tonight's meeting is to gather public input on the scope and issues to focus on as part of the Environmental Impact Report on the Downtown Specific Plan. With me tonight from AMEC are Bronwyn Green. She's going to be the official timekeeper. And then also Erica Leachman is here to take down notes for you on the board to make sure we record everything. Bronwyn will also be recording to make sure we get all the comments down. Move? Too close? I warned you.
No, I want you to decide this because I want to see the screen also.
Okay. Over here then.
Yeah.
Okay. So I've always had a problem with the cameras. So we're going to briefly go over the approach to the EIR, the CEQA process, and then Francie's also going to give a presentation on the project description so folks have a better understanding. And again, our goal tonight is really to hear from you about your concerns regarding environmental issues surrounding the project. This is not a decision-making hearing on the project itself. I'm not a decision maker. I'm a consultant hired by the city to independently assess the environmental impacts of the project. So we're really focusing on the environmental impacts and not necessarily the components of the project unless they relate to what might potentially be an environmental impact, traffic congestion, air quality, et cetera. And we'll touch on those briefly. It's all about public comment tonight, though. But public comments will be limited to 2 minutes, so everybody can have a chance to participate. There's 3 ways for you to participate. You can turn in a speaker slip. I don't know how many we have right now. We have maybe 20? 10 speaker slips. So if you actually want to speak at the microphone here, you need to fill out a chit in the back of the room so we can have a record. So for those who want to speak, the microphone's here, fill out a chit. The second way to participate is to go back to a station that is manned by city staff and consultants in the back room. They'll take down your comments. You can ask them informal questions also. And the third way, there are comment cards. And those comment cards will be turned in to us so we make sure we have a record. Talking a little bit about the goal of this tonight and the role of the CEQA process. The goal tonight is to inform the public about the EIR process, to identify key environmental issues to be analyzed in the EIR, and I'll touch upon those later. Describe opportunities for public comment. Again, I think, in my opinion, the heart of the CEQA process, one of the key elements is public comment and the opportunity for public participation to make sure people's voices are heard and their concerns are addressed regarding the environmental impacts of a project. So we're here again to solicit your input on the program EIR, gather public input. We want to really identify the key issues of community concern to make sure that we can address those to the extent we can and that there are environmental issues in the Environmental Impact Report and receive your feedback on the scope of the EIR. This is, oh, dang, I always do that. So again, this is really critical. This is the early stage in the process where we're going to obtain your input. And as part of the Environmental Impact Report, we'll have a matrix in the back. We'll have a list of everybody who's commented, all the letters and emails we've received, and there'll be a key telling you where those are responded to in the EIR, which section, not down to page number, but subsection, so you can track your own comments and see they've been responded to. So the basic purposes of the California Environmental Quality Act, for those of you who are not familiar with it, and I think many people in Santa Monica are, is to inform the decision makers and the public about the consequences and physical environmental impacts of the action of project approval, identify ways and mitigation measures or alternatives to avoid potentially significant impacts of the project, and provide additional opportunities for public input in advance of decision-making hearings. A little bit about the CEQA process. We're at the notice of preparation stage right now. We're at the scoping meeting for that. We have about 30 days since issuance of the notice for you to either submit written comments or oral comments tonight. Then AMEC is going to take those comments and draft strategic framework prepared by the city and go away and prepare the environmental impact report over the next several months. The EIR will come out. There'll be a 45-day public review period. Again, there'll be chances to submit written comments on that EIR, which we are required by law to respond to in detail. We take that role very seriously. And then after finalization of the EIR, we'll respond to your comments and make changes to the EIR. The EIR will go forward to the Planning Commission and the City Council into the decision-making process and for EIR certification. So for this meeting and for the notice of preparation as required by CEQA, the city sent out over 8,900 notices to all residents, property owners, businesses within the downtown, newspaper notices, people within 1,000 feet of the downtown, a copy of the notice that was sent out. So the city's done a pretty thorough job of noticing this hearing. At this point in time, I want to turn it over to Francie to give an overview of the project description so we understand what we're going to be analyzing. That'll inform your comments later tonight.
Thanks, Dan. All right, can you all hear me? Yeah? Okay, good. So, yeah, I'll take that, thanks. So, I brought this binder up here because this is in the back of the room. There are copies of this that you can see. And the notice that Dan was referring to, we sent out 8,900 notices. The notice referred to where you can get this online, this whole document. And this is the Downtown Specific Plan Framework document, which, I will forward here. Let me go here. Was published in September. It compiles all of the work that's been done to date in terms of the hearings and discussions on the Downtown Specific Plan. It also serves as the project description for the CEQA document. So that's why I thought you would be interested in it. It has really good richness. I'm going to just go over really briefly the basic topics that are in it, knowing that you have access to the full document and can read it. Just as a refresher, we've had about 5 community workshops on the Downtown Specific Plan since we've been working on it over the last 20 months. And we've had 9 public agendized hearings with the council, with the Planning Commission, and with the Landmarks Commission. So we've had opportunities for input, and we'll have future opportunities for input as well as we move into these next stage of the draft document and the draft EIR. Go past this. I want to go through first the vision and principles. There are 10. And they'll sound pretty familiar, I think, at this point for those of you that have been following along the conversation and participating. First really is prioritizing the pedestrian experience in the downtown, looking at the ways that is really a very special part of the character of the downtown and makes it special in our region. Providing an efficient and user-friendly multimodal circulation network. The key is diversity, a diversity of ways to get into the downtown, through the downtown, on lots of modes. You've even seen recently the expansion of pedicabs. Our modal options keep getting more diverse. We're going to be having bike sharing soon. So we see this expansion of the way we get around, which helps us be able to keep driving when we need to drive and be able to do other things when we want to do other things. Preserving and enhancing downtown's basic urban form. We've had a lot of discussions about that recently, looking at the districts that have evolved as housing has grown in the downtown, and we've developed sort of a neighborhood core in the southern area, looking at the historic downtown core and the 3rd Street Promenade, the Ocean Avenue transition, and respecting those character areas and how we might help them be enhanced and really be wonderful places to be. Lincoln Boulevard as well. Implementing the loose tiering system. It's really important that we expand this system and expand it into the downtown. It doesn't currently exist, and to make sure that we ensure that projects that go above a baseline are contributing to making the community better, making the neighborhood better, and providing community benefits. Providing opportunities for exceptional community benefit. So there are certain places where the site is large or this unique location where we can try to achieve those larger network improvements like a museum or other types of cultural amenities, transportation and circulation improvements near the freeway, and so on. Integrating Expo Light Rail, very important. Make sure we figure out how to get people safely and easily onto the train, put in the wayfinding to help them get there, provide access for all of you to take taxis or walk or however you get dropped off, however you want to get to the Expo station. Addressing vehicle congestion, very important, something we hear from a lot of you. It's an issue we have to address, we have to take it seriously, and the plan really is looking at ways we can do that. Maintaining economic success. Downtown's a great, successful place. It's important that it stay that way, and we need to help it build upon its successes. Supporting new housing, looking at the way we can take those, 2,500 new units in the downtown and continue to diversify the stock we have, making sure that we have places for families as well as singles. And looking at ways we can preserve and enhance the unique character. Downtown is really special in Santa Monica in being really one of the first settling areas, and it has some really interesting character and fabric that we want to take seriously. And it makes the experience rich for all of us when we preserve those buildings. So that's the overview of the 10 basic vision and principles. Now I'm going to jump into some of the chapters. The header at the top is really the chapter if you are later looking at the document. Sustainability is core to our community. So after a history chapter in the framework, which is a really interesting read, by the way, there's a sustainability chapter that just brings in the loose sustainability components that we'll weave into the document, into the draft plan, making sure we are always taking seriously the intent to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, address climate change, and improve environmental performance of our buildings. Urban form, looking again how we can respect that character and sense of place, guiding buildings to be contributing to the area that they're in. Development standards and regulations that really affect building form, looking at how we can make sure buildings are oriented to the street in a positive way, that they're easy to access by multiple modes, that they are respecting shading and performance standards so we don't feel a canyon in the downtown, that we have that access to the natural light and air that so characterizes our experience down there. Looking at ground floor frontages and uses so that they're active, we don't have dead spaces, and how we can integrate open space as a unique part of making your way throughout the downtown. We have great open space at the edges, Tongva Park now, Powell Park, but we don't have a lot in the core of the downtown, so how can we add that to part of the experience? Design guidelines so that we can have aspirational statements that architects can work towards. So if people want some flexibility and to do something creative, that we have components that help guide what that should be through building composition, facade articulation, lighting, and basic building components. And the opportunity sites, which we've talked a lot about, you all know that council took an action to tell us to analyze 84 feet as the maximum height on the opportunity sites. And we're also looking at ways now that they can do things like help address some of our public parking needs, looking at ways they can provide roads and infrastructure, transportation improvements, open space, cultural amenities, and so on. Circulation, we are looking at all the different modes in the plan, looking at how people are driving, walking, biking, busing, parking in downtown. Major principles are first safety. It's important that you're not scared in the downtown, that you can make your way on whatever mode you're doing safely and without damage. Looking at the way we can evaluate person capacity. Regardless of what mode you're on, how do we get the most people through comfortably and smoothly? Optimizing access to parking. Right now we have a great parking resource. How do we make sure that people can find the available resource quickly through wayfinding and other things? How do we get access to private parking structures and make better use of the actual investments that are already there? And if we're going to add it, how do we add parking without congesting the streets in the core of the downtown more through peripheral parking and so on? Improving multimodal transportation is core to our sustainability and looking at how we can improve gateways. These priorities are somewhat similar, but also express the same thing, looking at walkability as really the character-defining feature of being in the downtown, peripheral parking as a way to both provide access, but also to avoid congesting the downtown streets, wayfinding, opportunity sites, and anticipating future measures. We know that there are concurrent things going on with this process, and we're trying to be flexible and anticipate them as much as we can. And with vehicles, looking at ways we can just keep things moving, keep a consistent flow, looking at the best technology for traffic management, looking at physical improvements where they can exist. We don't have a lot of opportunities for network improvements, but we do have a few. And evaluation of roadway capacity. So we could look at some reconfiguration if that were to be the right trade-off. The document talks a little bit about the trade-offs between different reconfigurations. What mode could move more if others move less. For example, if parking, certain areas have on-street parking removed for an additional travel lane, what's the impact of that? Or if you were to expand the sidewalk, what's the impact of that? Open space, I mentioned briefly looking at ways we can bring open space into the downtown and make better use of what we have. We have some really big plazas that aren't very active, that aren't very well used. Are there incentives or things we can offer to get those activated? And then how can we bring in some additional greening, urban forest, and sense of kind of our natural environment into the downtown? Preserving downtown's fabric, making sure that we look at our historic resources inventory that was recently completed and bring that into our thinking. Provide programs to recognize the place so that if you're unfamiliar with Santa Monica, you might actually get to read something about a historic resource as you happen upon it. Preservation of structures and looking at incentive options. And last but not least, economic diversity. How do we look at our local economy, make sure that we are sustainably investing in it, and that we're thinking about infrastructure and job diversity as part of that. So that is it for the overview. Again, there are copies back there to look at, and I encourage you to look at online. They're also in the libraries, and there are copies at City Hall to look at as well. And with that, I'll pass it back to Dan.
Thanks, Rancy. Just again, touch a little bit on the process. I'll venture the laser pointer, but I failed last time, so I won't. We're at the scoping stage. This period runs from September 19th through October 21st. So all your comments are due. Your emails, your written letters are all due by then to make sure they get addressed in the EIR. Also, of course, your comments tonight, your comment cards, your comments on the boards and back will also all be incorporated in the EIR and addressed. After we receive the close of the NOP comment period, we start responding, doing a matrix to respond to those comments, make sure they're incorporated in the EIR. We'll prepare the EIR. I did want to emphasize that there will be upcoming decision maker workshops on the plan in the late fall, winter time, unrelated to the EIR process, just additional refinements before the Planning Commission of the draft plan. We plan on releasing the draft environmental impact report for a 45-day public review period in January of next year. That'll again be an opportunity for you to provide written comments on the adequacy of that EIR. We hope we do a good job. We sort of pride ourselves in our thoroughness on environmental impact assessment. And then again, we launch into a detailed response to comments session on the EIR. Make sure that any changes that are warranted in the text, we go back and incorporate them in the text, and we do our best to make sure your issues are addressed. After finalization of the EIR, it will go into the decision-making hearing before the Planning Commission and then the City Council. There will be several more hearings, without a doubt, with opportunities for public comment, both on the adequacy of the EIR to the Planning Commission, as well as details of the plan to both the Planning Commission and the City Council. So just again, touching on this, we're in October now. We're going to go into the EIR process, which is going to last through January through March, basically, once the EIR is finalized, and then decision-making hearings in the spring of next year. I want to touch briefly on the key EIR issues we're going to go into. This will be a full-scope EIR, so we're going to look at every issue. We might not look at minerals or forestry, although we will look at the urban forest, but not forestry per se. But we'll be looking at all the key environmental issues. Transportation is obviously of major concern to the community. We're proud to be teaming with Fair and Peers. We've worked with Fair and Peers. They'll do the travel demand model. We've worked with them in many different jurisdictions on transportation and congestion issues, and I know they do a good job. I have a lot of faith in them. Cultural and historic resources we know are of major concern to many members of the community, particularly historic structures downtown and retaining the historic character of downtown. We have a highly qualified firm we work with called Applied Earthworks. We've worked on them with probably half dozen EIRs in downtown Santa Barbara and the historic resources there, and in downtown San Luis Obispo and adaptive reuse of historic buildings there. So we're confident they will do justice to the historic resource issue downtown. Aesthetics and visual resources, we've heard a lot of, I've been to many of the hearings and workshops, I've heard a lot of the community concerns about light and air in downtown and changes in character, so we'll be doing some photo simulations and building massing within the EIR so you can kind of get a vision of what things will look like. Solar access and sun and shadow, I know that's an issue. We'll be doing an analysis of that as well. And then the standard issues like air quality, greenhouse gas emissions, which are always of concern in the city, and neighborhood and construction effects with ongoing construction downtown. The cumulative effects of that are often of concern to the citizens, and we do our best to identify those clearly and come up with the best working assessment we can of how to address those and how to minimize those effects on citizens. Utilities in the downtown, there's a pretty robust infrastructure downtown, but some of it's aging. So we have a utilities engineer on our staff to take a look at the adequacy of utilities in the downtown, water and sewer in particular. Hazards are those that you're all familiar with, aging buildings constructed with older materials can contain hazardous materials. Geology and soils, we're aware there's some concern regarding bluff stability that has been raised at some of the hearings. We have a registered geologist on our staff to address geological issues and soils. Biological resources, we're going to focus, I think, primarily on the city's urban forest and potential effects on street trees. It is a highly urbanized area, but certainly those trees can be considered a valuable resource. Water quality and hydrology, groundwater issues could be of concern, and then land use and growth inducement, population and housing. We will be looking at alternatives within the EIR to the project. We haven't formulated those alternatives yet. There's a mandatory CEQA alternative called the no project alternative, which we have to look at in detail, and that includes analyzing impacts under your existing plans and policies, and that allows your decision makers to compare the proposed project to the impacts of no action. So the next steps. We're in the NOP process right now. The EIR scoping meeting is tonight. We're going to launch our CEQA analysis in December. The draft plan should be available, finalized. The framework's already out, and then in January we release the EIR. So we're going to have a fun fall and early winter time in our office. February and March will be the comment period on the EIR. So the opportunities for you to stay involved are many. Written comments are always welcome because it really allows us to kind of respond in detail. And that'll be your next chance for written comments after the close of this period. Will be on the draft program EIR. It will then go, after public review, we'll go to the decision makers with additional opportunities to comment both on the EIR again and on the project itself. And at the risk of getting Rachel angry, that's her email right there. So the city takes, it's always full, no, the city takes both written comments and emails. Many folks these days like to communicate by email. They find it to be easier and quicker. And so we have a lot of our comments are split 50-50 now, or even more emails than letters in the back of our EIRs. I think we just got 150 emails on a project in Santa Barbara. So that being said, I think we want, before we turn it over to public comment, again, I want to emphasize, you can come forward. We have about 20 speaker slips, 25 maybe. You can also go back to the boards back there that are manned by both city staff, and that's Tom Golf and Farron Piers. If you're concerned about transportation, he's in the corner ready to talk to you and take down your comments. So that's another way, and I have a few comment cards here with comments on them. I'm going to call your name anyway in case you want to speak. If you don't want to speak, you're not compelled to speak, but we have your comments too. I'm going to limit folks to 2 minutes. Brahman has a really nifty alarm that goes off because we want everybody to have a chance to speak tonight. And again, please try and focus your comments on the environmental issues as opposed to the plan itself. I'm just an environmental planner. I have no authority over the plan. I'm just here to assess it. And that being said, if anybody has any questions on the CEQA process itself, you know, how we participate, what's upcoming, I haven't covered something, feel free to ask a question. It's not a debate society tonight or anything. I'm just here to hear what you want me to look at in the EIR, and I guarantee that's what we do for a living. I've been doing it for 30 years. So anyway, that being said, we'll go ahead and launch, and I apologize. Wait till he steps the microphone. Here, hand me 3. I'm going to call 3 at a time just to expedite it, and I have to be honest, I'm getting a little older now, and so I forgot my glasses. So not only will I mispronounce your name, I won't be able to read it. So if I hold it like this, don't make fun of me, okay? Stacy Douglas, followed by Matt Baird, who has a comment written, so you don't have to speak, followed by Jane Kohler, who also has a comment written. So if you're going to pass, then I'll move on to others.
Is there any way of fixing that microphone? Not this microphone.
Oh,
something is ricocheting in the
You'll
sound.
have to ask one of these gentlemen.
Very hard.
I can't even work the laser pointer. I hate to admit that. Go ahead, ma'am.
All right, good evening. My name is Stacy Dalgleish, and I am a resident of Santa Monica. I would like to ask that you be sure to include in your EIR the maximum build-out down the road for everything that has already been approved, the height limits, the density limits. And I've been thinking about this because I have 3 children. They are all of child-producing ages. And I've been encouraging them to do EIRs on their own lives and their capability to sustain families. And with the idea that if they may want to have a house full of children, but if 20 years down the road they don't have the resources to be able to take care of those children, they need to be thinking about that now. And I would hope that your EIR would enable the city and ourselves to look at what we are in the process of enabling to happen 20 years down the road, and if we will in fact have the ability, the resources, and the infrastructure to be able to handle what we've already approved. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your comments. Matt?
First, excuse me, everybody. First of all, I'd like to say, because of the earthquake redevelopment zone, Santa Monica City Council got to keep 100% of the tax increment with all these new developments and buildings that they developed. When I first moved here, Santa Monica was a sleepy little beach community. Now it is Beverly Hills West. If that was your mission, good job, fantastic. Because the overdevelopment, the lack of green space is quite frustrating. Over on at Century West, developers donated over $100,000 to City Council, and their project was greenlit over at Berkeley and Wilshire. Now, that with no environmental report, and I think, Kevin, you're on board with us for thinking that there should be an environmental impact report done on that development over at Berkeley and Wilshire. And I just want to say that if there are developers that are going to develop here downtown and they donate money to City Council, that should be open. That information should be up on the city website for everybody to see. So, hey, if developers donate to City Council, we should know how much money they donate to basically their politicians. I think that's the right thing to do. And I would hate to think that City Council is up for sale. That would make me feel very sad. So if there are developers that are going to donate and are going to build up this area, which I love so much, that information should be put up on the website for everybody to see. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Matt. Just keep in mind, our mission is to assess the environmental impacts. We're not charged with the City Council. Before you go, Jane, can I just call the next three speakers? Ruth Ann Lair, Deirdre Hall, and Armin Melkonian. Sorry about that. Go ahead, Jane.
Hi, I'm Jane Kohler, and I'm a 46-year resident of the area. I'm representing NOMA's Land Use Committee positions that an overall EIR study of the downtown needs to be completed before individual projects are given permission to build. We must know cumulative from this overall EIR as best we can project in numbers the square feet proposed, the population expansion expected, traffic circulation, parking, water uses and air quality, safety and sanitary concerns, and which will generate, which the expansions will generate before we allow piecemeal development. Once something is built, we, the citizens of Santa Monica, have to live with the consequences. Pretty pictures without concrete numbers that elaborate exactly what the height and density proposed will generate in real terms leave us unable to judge actual expected results of overall development. Moreover, the members of the City Council are denied actual means of determining the real effects of the proposed development. Therefore, we ask at a minimum that before any projects are advanced through the planning process, the city complete an EIR study of at least 2 scenarios for its downtown plan, using as a baseline the current state of the downtown. Scenario 1, building out everything to the maximum extent permitted under current zoning. Scenario 2, adding to this scenario the proposed modifications for 8 opportunity sites for developers. Then, when the City Council makes decisions about what is to be allowed and how zoning is to be changed in order to permit reasonable development, the City Council members will be able to integrate this data with the vision in the loose that foresees height and density increases, but still envisions a downtown built for the primary use and comfort of the residents of Santa Monica.
Thank you very much, Jane.
And thank you for my extra help.
Ruth Ann?
Hello, I'm Ruth Ann Lara. I'm a Landmarks Commissioner, and I'm only going to address the historic preservation component of the plan. My first comment is that the project description of the historic preservation strategy is flawed and needs revision. It doesn't reflect comments made by the Landmarks Commission in our meeting with the project consultants, and I'm sure the Commission will have a response to this in the future. Regarding the strategy of facade preservation, I don't believe that anyone in the preservation community would advocate the preservation of facades of historic buildings. This is a huge misunderstanding in the project description of what is an acceptable approach to preserving historic buildings. It's appropriate only in rare circumstances and successfully done even more rarely. The building that's pictured in the report at 507 Wilshire is not a model, but an embarrassment to the Landmarks Commission. The landmark facade looks like a small fragment pasted onto a huge development. Preservation looks at a whole building for either continued use or adaptive reuse. Where a historic building is incorporated into a new project, this must be done in a very sensitive way. The best example of this approach is the Rap Saloon, part of Hostel International. I suggest, in fact, that you look at facade preservation as a negative impact in the EIR that may result from new development which is inconsistent with the scale and character of existing historic buildings downtown. Preserving only a piece of a historic building means losing the context and the memory of what that building signified when it was constructed. The EIR must also look at the impacts of the potential loss of buildings on the historic resources inventory as significant impacts. Each loss diminishes the tangible memories of our history and development in the downtown. Some of the HRI buildings are landmarks and their loss will be clearly significant. Other HRI buildings may not rise to the level of landmarks, but are considered significant resources under CEQA. They may be adversely impacted either through demolition or by inappropriate adjacent development next to them that overwhelms them so that their presence is diminished. In fact, the negative consequences of large-scale development as an addition to a historic building or adjacent to one can cause it to lose its significance and should be evaluated. The case in point is the future of the Sears building. I have more comments to make on mitigation, but I guess I'll have to submit them in writing.
Thank you, Ruth Ann.
Okay.
I appreciate that. Appreciate your comments. Deirdre, you're next.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Deidre Hall, and like everybody here, I feel lucky that I get to live in Santa Monica. I first fell in love with Santa Monica when I began attending church here. And when my life changed and I realized that I was a single mom with 2 boys to raise, I quickly chose Santa Monica. I love its quaintness. I love its sense of family and community. And when I began looking at properties, I was told, when you move to Santa Monica, you have to learn to live here because you can't get in or out of here. So you just have to do everything in Santa Monica. I'm also lucky because I have a job and I work at NBC Burbank, so I drive against traffic every day, and when I come home, I also drive against traffic. And what I look at every time I go to and from work is a sea of parked cars trying to get somewhere in this city. We were coming home one day and saw just a glut of a parking lot, and it was starting, it seemed, on Ocean, and my son said, "How does that happen?" I said, "I think people drive out of the sea to go somewhere. I don't know where they come from." My concern, obviously, is with adding more housing here, with adding more space here, we also add more traffic. And what is now burdensome could become completely impossible. So I think I share a lot of people's concerns about the traffic issue in Santa Monica. Thanks.
Thanks for your comments, Deidre. Armin, before you go, can I just read 3 more names? You can step forward if you want. Wendy Olshan, Carol Lemline, and Liz Bell. Liz, you have a great name. I can read it, and it's easy. Go ahead, Armin.
Hi, I'm Armin Melkonians. I'm actually a registered civil engineer, and I am familiar with your company. and I have every confidence that you guys are going to do a fantastic analysis on this specific plan. You guys are a world-class environmental firm. That being said, I don't have any confidence in the projections of growth that will be used as the base matrix for the analysis. The specific plan for the downtown will rely on the loose necessarily to remain consistent on its projections of growth. However, the projections of growth for the loose were specifically done for the horizon year event and based on economic forecasts and historical trends. The economics of development of the growth-inducing impacts of the plan itself were never considered. And we have seen development agreement applications being filed by developers as well as permits being issued, which are very close to exceeding the horizon year projections to date, only after 3 years. So I think that's going to be a big discrepancy to try to fit with those projection numbers in the specific plan analysis. I think those projection numbers need to be revised prior to any of the environmental impacts being assessed, because otherwise they'll just be irrelevant. So I think that as the first step, we almost need to step back to the loose and do a revised EIR so that the specific plan can remain consistent with the loose for the overall city. All of the pieces of the parts must equal the whole. So we've heard 2,500 units from planning being projected for downtown and 1,300 for the Bergamot area. But yet we're already over those numbers. So also the specific plan must look at the overall impacts of the growth of what the growth-inducing impacts have been for the entire city as part of its specific plan duties. So I think those are the key first steps that need to occur before any of the analysis moves forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comments. Wendy? Sorry.
Sorry, we got out of order.
Carol, you're next.
Yeah, I've been a resident here for 40 years, and I've watched the city change from quaint, community-oriented, resident-oriented, green areas, easy to get around, to what it is now. However, since there are other people that have addressed those things, I have another concern for anyone who was here in the '94 earthquake. There have been faults that crisscross, especially at the edge of the downtown area. That area was hit very badly. The day of the earthquake, I happened to be at the top of the first Fed building on the 12th floor. It was not a comfortable feeling. And then walked home because things were blocked. I was in walking distance and saw the devastation. There have been structures being built all around LA County, in particular in Hollywood and Century City, where they've already under construction and they are now discovering that the maps they were using for faults are inaccurate. So I would like addressed, how current are the fault maps here? You also have the Miramar wants to go up. That's in a real bad danger zone. We're already losing part of the bluffs. In an earthquake, you know, lose the bluffs, you're going to have this big tall tower they're trying to put up fall over on other residences. It also, when you're building up like that, it's going to impact when we have an emergency and a disaster like an earthquake, that the personnel is not going to be able to get around either because of the density. So, but my main point here is we're already seeing in other parts of the county where they have not thoroughly studied those faults. And it is common knowledge that Santa Monica has at least 2 large faults that intersect. So, yeah, I want this addressed because you're trying to put up all these tall buildings. It's bad enough with the ones that are 5 stories or less. So it's a public safety issue. Thank you.
Thanks so much for your comments. Carol, now it's your turn.
Thank you. I'm president of the Santa Monica Conservancy, and my concerns are related to preservation, particularly how the objectives that we have described in the 1996 Bayside Plan, the 2002 Historic Preservation Element, and the LUCE to adequately protect the historic resources of downtown have not been realized. While the Landmarks Commission has had a short list of worthy downtown properties, their progress has been very slow, and several of the properties described as landmark worthy in the 1996 plan have yet to be designated. The Conservancy's Advocacy Committee believes that there are an additional 12 to 20 properties in the downtown that should be considered for landmarking absolutely as soon as possible. A second point is the lack of protection for buildings that are on the inventory as potential contributors to a district. I don't know anyone in preservation in Santa Monica who believes a downtown district is feasible because of the restrictions on how many property owners you need to have. And therefore, there's very little protection for buildings on the HRI unless they are designated. Our criteria for demo review are purely structural and allow the stripping of all character-defining features without review by the Landmarks Commission. So many of the buildings that were previously on the HRI that we have lost their integrity without any review. Finally, we lack incentives sufficient to motivate any but the most preservation-minded owners to think about adaptive reuse as an attractive alternative. To conclude, the EIR needs to recommend a much more proactive designation strategy, protections for structures that would otherwise be considered contributors to a historic district, and additional incentives for property owners, the carrot as well as the stick. Thank you.
Thank you. Liz, before you go, I want to call 3 more names, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Denise Bostone, David Martin, and Miriam, I think it's Miriam Ginsburg. Go ahead, Liz.
Thank you. In 1970, I was a young researcher at Gruen Associates when CEQA was passed. Although some have always wanted to get rid of it, I believe it adds protections for all of us. And as I heard you go through your introduction tonight, I thought, wow, man, they're covering everything. There's no reason for me to talk. Almost, I thought that, not quite. So I'm up here talking. And I wanted to bring out a point that was made in a column in the Daily Press a couple of weeks ago, written by 3 architects and Phil Brock on the Parks and Recreation Commission, that Santa Monica itself is an iconic place. People come here for the beach, for the weather, the promenade, the beach house, and the sense of well-being in a city the size and scale of Santa Monica brings, and the feeling that maybe, just maybe, if the planets aligned just right and they were allowed to live anywhere they could, that Santa Monica would be that place. Now we're engaged in this great exercise to determine the future look of the most iconic of places, the downtown. I assure you, if you mess up this place with buildings that are too big and out of scale with the rest of the other buildings, with sidewalks that are too crowded to walk and streets that are too crowded to drive, word will get out that once there was a place that was nearly perfect, but then they ruined it. Money and the thought that just one more building will be okay. One more building, we'll just add one here, won't ruin it, but it will, and it did in this dream. Please don't let this happen as you go through the draft EIR. For one thing, wait until Expo comes and see what its effect is going to be. For another, wait until the current build-out is complete to see what the effects of that is going to be. And don't let the density get out of hand. It may be a dream that we can keep the scale of Santa Monica human, but after all, this is where we came to believe that dreams really do come true. Thank you.
Thanks, Liz. Denise?
Good evening. After the loose lie won at the ballot with the deception of Terry O'Day's organization, Save Our City, the City Council was off and running, approving as much development as was physically possible, even to the detriment of existing residents in the city in general. For example, Bergamot Station was initially said to have 700 new car trips, but at the September 10, 2013 City Council meeting, that number became 2,700. And at the last Planning Commission meeting, that number became 7,000. Really makes you wonder what a disaster 1,000 new residential units downtown will be. Just so you understand why I now don't believe what the city or the city council says, because it's all been deception. All the way to when Gleam Davis, who's attended every downtown Santa Monica Inc. board meeting, sitting with the board, except for the last meeting, saying she wanted the EIR height limit at 84 feet for the Downtown Specific Plan. But then at the very next city council meeting, downtown Santa Monica Inc. board member John Warfel had his company's 148-foot building presented, saying to me that what Gleam Davis was doing was the bidding of downtown Santa Monica Inc. to make the EIR work look not as bad as possible, with the assistance of Elaine Polachek, Francine Steffen, and Sarah Lejeune. When we've all heard the numerous developers' plans and very few buildings planned for development, like the Wyndham, the Miramar, the Geary buildings, or the 4th, 5th, and Arizona site, are 84 feet, showing that 84 feet was never intended to be a real height limit, but really all for show. So the city can say that they did one. I hope that someone can help to stop our greedy local government run amok, which can be seen in the Downtown Specific Plan. Thank you.
Thanks, Denise. I have, let's see, David? Were you next, Miriam? I may have gotten you guys mixed up. Go ahead, Miriam. You were next.
Miriam Ginsburg, resident since 1948. So I've seen the city change. I saw them triple my father's rent. He was a barber on Main Street for 31 years. They tripled his rent, and he was instantly retired. I love this city. What can I tell you? I mean, it's just a wonderful place to be. I love the ocean. I love the beaches. What I don't love is the amount of traffic, noise, congestion, and I have real feelings of sadness for the people that live, you know, where they want to construct north of Wilshire, you know, Wilshire Boulevard. All those people are people that live there. Don't you guys get it? And then I live in Ocean Park, and it has played havoc with my house. The traffic, the noise. You go to sleep with noise, and you wake up with noise. I don't know if any of the other people that live here have that. If you don't, you're fortunate to live off of a boulevard. But what I've seen in the change of Santa Monica has not been what I would call a success. You know, somebody said, you know, are we the victims of our success? And I think we're just victims at this point. That's how I see it. I hope you listen to these people that have come before you, because they have really done their homework. They're giving you information. I've done a survey of Santa Monica. People here don't want it. The majority don't want it. And your surveys will twist it around so that it looks good for you and bad for us. There aren't enough carrots that are being given to all the places that need programs, schools, everything. If you want to have all the carrots, people, if you want all the carrots, you're going to have to look at Westwood. It's going to look like Westwood, or maybe Manhattan by the time these people get done. I mean, that's just how I see it. It used to be a beach town. Now it's a town with a beach in front of it. That's all it is, ladies and gentlemen. It has changed. And thank you all for what you've all tried to do to stop these overdevelopments. Thank you.
Thanks, Miriam. David, before you go, can I call three more, please? Julie Lamb, Kit Dreyfus, Phil Brock. Excellent names, every one of them. Go ahead, David.
Hi, I want to address aesthetic and visual environmental impacts of the urban geometry. I'm generally supportive of higher building densities in downtown for the sake of fostering a walkable habitat, but there's a limit on acceptable density set by aesthetics and quality of experience. Design standards should be based on how we want the downtown to look and feel for its inhabitants. It's easy to demonize parking lots as artifacts of suburban culture, but if they are all replaced by 5- or 6-story buildings without step backs, the pedestrian experience on the sidewalk is going to be a lot more closed in. CEQA gives guidelines for the content of an EIR, but allows you broad latitude to study really any environmental impacts it seems reasonable to study. I want to thank you for indicating in the notice of preparation what studies you are planning to undertake. You say you will study light, shadow, and air, and scenic vistas. I would like to propose 2 additional sorts of quantifiable aesthetic impacts to look at. First, the impact on the total amount of sky visible from the pedestrian point of view throughout downtown. From any position on the ground, some portion of the total dome of the sky is typically visibly accessible, and the rest blocked. This could be expressed by a percentage, and it would be useful to know how the proposed DSP would impact this figure in the aggregate of positions around downtown. Second, the impact on the existence of views at a distance throughout downtown. Not only scenic vistas are significant, so is the ability to see ordinary buildings or other features at a distance. At any position, the total distance of sight lines available in all directions can be measured, and the aggregate for this figure throughout downtown would be a useful metric of the DSP's impact on the visual environment.
Thank you, David.
Thanks.
Jewel?
Yeah, I'm Jewel Lamb, longtime resident of Santa Monica, lived in the same house for 45 years. What we've got here, I was involved with the long-term plan for the city of Santa Monica. And many of the things that came out, a good amount of effort was put into it, and it doesn't seem that anybody has ever paid attention to it. It was done in the 70s. Ken Edwards was on that. Now the Ken Edwards Center is in honor of him, and I'm sure he's turning over in his grave for what's taken place in Santa Monica. But here's the thing. Santa Monica has had an older population from the very beginning, and the things that sometimes are planned are what's going to happen by the time our construction, everything takes place to the people that may not be so old now, but will be older then. And we're talking about sidewalks for strolling and such. Well, I want to tell you, as we get older, we can walk, but we don't want to walk very far and can't. So that concept is a nice thing to say, but you don't have to be a genius to understand that we're all going to be living longer, and the aging population of our length of life is longer. Now, bicycles are wonderful. I think they're terrific, but it isn't going to be the older people that are going to be riding the bicycles. Most individuals drive their car. I know my wife got to the point where she wouldn't go past Sepulveda because of traffic, and then it got federal. People feel that they're trapped now. There's going to be building. There's a new couple buildings that they want to put up on Wilshire Boulevard, not too far, for residences. That traffic is going to come out here. Now, one of the things that we have to think about on transportation is that a transportation system, if it's really going to be planned well, has to be figured out. Traffic coming from north, south, east, west. Well, we can't figure it out because we've got an ocean there, so we can't have that transportation spread around like it had. The other thing is I worked on trying to develop a transportation system for the Los Angeles County in the 60s. And it was all-encompassing. It didn't take place. There's reasons why it didn't take place, but it was a hard battle because of the automobile industry. But BART system was being done at the same time they got theirs through. What happens is if you want to develop a city that's well, and you do your EIs after you come up with a concept, is that you build a transportation system. That makes it available for you to develop what you want to have to meet that. Los Angeles had two transportation systems. I grew up. It had Los Angeles Railway and Pacific Electric. It didn't cost the taxpayers anything. They put the transportation in, the area's built up. The idea of this whole area was that people would live distance from where they worked, and they would go into a central area and they'd come back. Now the concept of having people try to live where they work might be very good, but I have some property for quite a long time in Santa Monica. I've never had a resident work in Santa Monica. So,
Jewel, could you wrap up, please?
Sure, I'll wrap it up. Anyway, I'm sure that one of the things is it appears that we're talking about an EIR, but how can you talk about an EIR if we don't exactly know what we're going to do unless you already have the pre-concept?
I don't have any preconcepts, but
Okay.
we'll do our best for you. Kit?
Hi. When I moved to Santa Monica in 1969, I was leaving Pasadena for health reasons. Smog in the environment was making my children sick. For the first 30 years or so, Santa Monica was a pretty healthy community, and I had a role as a school nurse in keeping it that way. More recently, there's been a change in the city, brought about by the increased pace of development, which is beginning to contribute to an unhealthy mental health condition, sometimes called the rats in cages phenomenon. Too many people in a finite space, leading to competition for food, air, and water, green space, and yes, parking. So my vote for inclusion in the city's EIR, starting with the downtown, is transparency about the financial contributions and loans made to individual city council members by specific developers, their associates, and developer-funded PACs. The role of money in political campaigns is affecting democracy in our nation. We need to study the influence of developer donations on our city council. Please include that in the EIR. Thank you.
Bill, before you go, let me call three more, okay? Kevin Mann, Alan Sandez, Cinder, and Alvin...
It's Gillich.
Gillich, that's a good name. Gillich.
He's a fine Recreation and Parks Commissioner.
Go ahead, sir.
Hi, I'm Phil Brock. I haven't lived here as long as Miriam, but I've got 59 years and 9 months so far because I was born at St. John's. So for me and for all of us in this room, this is our city. This is a city that we love. I think there are a couple of fundamental points. We're all concerned about traffic, obviously. We're all concerned about the increased density, and we're all concerned about the rush to add population to downtown. So if we look at the 2010 census, the 2015 loose projections, we're supposed to be somewhere around 90,000. My understanding is from the census right now, we're somewhere around 91,215. We're already going a couple of years in advance. 2020, we've declared that we will be self-sufficient again for water. Do we have that water in our wells? Do we have aquifers that are capable of sustaining continued growth? If we're going to add continued growth downtown, are we going to have to build a new elementary school? Do we take Madison back from Santa Monica College, for instance? Do we add that to our inventory? And you know, a really thing that concerns, I think, the Landmarks Commission, it concerns the Conservancy, and it concerns how we rebuild or how we add to our downtown, is adaptive reuse. Do we just tear down buildings and continue to build 6-story apartment complexes full of bachelors and one-bedrooms? Or do we look at taking older buildings, adapting them, reusing them, maintaining a history? You know, my second favorite city in Los Angeles County has always been Pasadena. And I've always said that if we didn't have a beach anymore, my other favorite city to live in would be Pasadena because it's against the mountains and they've kept that low-rise feeling, wide streets. You walk between courtyards to go to restaurants. They have green space in their buildings. We're not doing any of that right now. We're looking at buildings that are full of bachelors, full of one-bedrooms, under the guise that, yes, we have a light rail coming. But you know what? We weren't desolate. We're already a built-up city. So the effects on traffic, the effects on the new transportation system are integral to the development of downtown. And regardless of what studies say, we don't have to follow the studies. We don't have to overbuild downtown just because we have a light rail coming. The residents here live here, love this city because of the quality of the life they were able to have. My mother was born February 23rd, 1928 in this city. She's still here. She's frustrated because not only can't she leave the city, but she can't even go downtown, and she's on 12th Street. So I urge you to study traffic. I urge you to study our water self-sufficiency. Can we really do that? Are our loose projections really going to be exceeded because of this rush to continue to build apartments? And how do we compensate? I'm the chair of the Recreation and Parks Commission. One of my key concerns is, how do people feel comfortable walking, bicycling, and driving downtown? How do they continue to see the sky? How do they continue to see the palm trees? How do they continue to not just feel like they're in a canyon of buildings? Those items are integral to what your mission is and what our downtown vision should be. Our downtown vision shouldn't be high rises. It shouldn't be large buildings. It should be a comfortable living environment where the people who are born tonight at St. John's and born tonight at Santa Monica Hospital love this city when they reach 59 years old, or 67 years old, okay? And you have, my mother's 85, so you have a ways to go. So those are things that are important to the city. And you're reaching out to Lincoln Boulevard. Lincoln Boulevard right now is going to be a mass of destruction in a lot of ways, because you won't be able to cross Lincoln in Colorado. We're making a huge mistake by putting a light rail system on the street instead of having it elevated. So that border of downtown is going to be totally crowded. How do we solve that? How do we make this city in 2030 and 2040 a city that the people sitting here and their descendants want to live in? Thank you.
Thanks, Phil. Are you Kevin?
Yes.
Okay, Kevin.
My name's Kevin, and I'm also a Santa Monica born resident, born at St. John's Hospital. And basically, parking for the downtown area should be 90 minutes free to encourage, not dissuade people from spending their out-of-town dollars here. 9 minutes free parking. They took that away. It should be returned. The train is going to make a lot more foot traffic down in that downtown area and along 4th Street, which is going to make it far more difficult to get your car to the highway. And also, there's a lot of traffic on 2nd California. You want to build a high-rise building there, and it's going to be a nightmare. It already is a nightmare. Just to get to the 10 freeway from the California incline, you got to wait 5 to 10 minutes currently. And that's because Malibu has a priority to get through. The hotels want to build, what, 400? They want to build 450 parking spaces. That's not adequate. Their employees already park along the streets, and it's only going to get worse. They have ballrooms, restaurants, workers. They need 400 parking spaces just for the hotel and for the hotel rooms, as well as the new condos. That leaves them 50 more parking spaces for the rest. That's not going to be sufficient. The loose was created to keep our coastal area beautiful, the Santa Monica you have less people here, which is muchly needed. We're already well overtaxed with the population in Santa Monica. It's impossible to get in and out of town, as many people have already stated. So the loose should be, not just revised, but it shouldn't be allowed to go over the loose. The loose is there for a reason, and you're giving everybody the right to go 4 stories when it's supposed to be 3 stories. You're going to allow hotels to go 22 stories. It's just not going to work, and you're going to lose money. They're saying it's going to create $5 million more a year in hotel tax for the city. That's not true. You're going to lose money because there are going to be less hotel rooms, and also 7 to 10 years worth of construction. That's lost revenue for the city. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. Alan?
My name's Alan. I own 2 buildings on 2nd Street, and I live on 4th. I lived here since '84 Olympics, but my dad built the 2 buildings in the late '60s. What's going to be happening with the Miramar is so upsetting, and it's upsetting now. Right now, my niece cannot park in front of her apartment building because people who work at the Miramar park on the street. So she's screwed anytime she tries to park. We're going to be fixing the California incline soon.
this is going to be a perfect storm. We have all this traffic going to Malibu, coming from Malibu, and they're not going to be able to get into the city. And we're not going to be able to leave the city. It's just horrible. I vote for a no project. That's what I would like to see. I'd like to see nothing done there. Okay? Is it clear?
Before you go, Alvin, let me call 3 more speakers, okay? Keep us going along here. Thanks for your comments, sir. Patricia Barr, there. Bruya Finkel, and Nina Fresco. Alvin?
Good evening.
Did I just mangle those names so badly they don't recognize who they are?
It's pretty good. Mine's harder to pronounce than theirs.
Alvin, it's clean.
Yeah. So, good evening. My name is Alvin Gillich. I'm the chair of the North of Montana Association. And while I echo a lot of the comments made tonight, I wanted to add a few more and articulate on a few other points. First one is, I would like to see the program EIR for our downtown specific plan consist of at least 2 scenarios. One showing all potential development sites built out to the maximum allowed, which is 84 feet. The second scenario would include the first scenario plus the 8 opportunity sites built out even higher. Since there is interest to do that, why not show what the impact on the environment and our quality of life would be? Now, I know that in the DA process, a project that wants to exceed our current zoning is required to do its own project EIR, and that would happen anyway and is the financial responsibility of the developer, which is fine, and I think everyone agrees that that's how it should be. But I would like the program EIR that you guys are doing to be able to seamlessly integrate with subsequent project EIRs so that we really do get a full picture and scope of what could happen downtown and across all of Santa Monica, since we're not really that big anyway. So that I think is essential, because that is as close to a crystal ball as we could possibly get with this process. Phil mentioned, obviously, the impact of water and our water self-sufficiency. I know that's a goal of the city by 2020. If our population grows and our development grows, will we be able to attain that? If not, what's our water shortfall going to be? Where are we going to get the additional water that we need, and how will that all play out? Lastly, I'd like to focus on our population growth. I know the Luce has mentioned figures on where we plan to be by 2030. Does that need to be revised? If these 2 scenarios I mentioned are actually happen, what does that mean for our population by 2030? Is the Luce's present projections still relevant? Are they still relevant, or do they need to be revised, and what would that number look like? Thank you.
Thanks, Alvin. Patricia? Ria and Nina.
Hi, I'm Patricia Bauer. I am the co-vice chair of NOMA, so I'm piggybacking a little bit on what Alvin was just talking about. Just as a backdrop, we hear at our NOMA meeting from our members that people are concerned that the city that they love is systematically being overwhelmed by unwanted overdevelopment. And they say to us, this is our home. We want it to be protected. We have, the NOMA board has submitted a letter, which I will also distribute copies of, that lays out a number of questions, some of which Alvin just referred to. We want to assure that all comparisons start with the as-built city as it exists today in the downtown before we compare it with the scenarios. Our questions go from things like traffic and water self-sufficiency all the way to potential impact, adverse impact of additional traffic on adjacent and nearby communities. One thing that we are very much concerned about is the way that this process is being run. It seems to be backwards. We are, as a city, advancing projects through our process. We are moving toward all but approval of projects when we have not completed our EIR. This is very disturbing to us. We feel that we as a community are being besieged by marketing materials like this, in which developers are promising that they're going to be bringing new revenue to the city when we do not have in our hands the documentation that an EIR would bring that would say, how much is this going to cost us? It's going to cost us in traffic. It's going to cost us in infrastructure. It's going to cost us in a myriad number of ways. We want to have that measured. I also would like to read to you a question that we have in here Question number 7 that was alluded to earlier by a speaker. More than $1.5 million in political donations have been made by developers in recent city elections. Developers who made these contributions stand to reap profits of hundreds of millions of dollars, and they're seeking to gain advantage in a political system. We would like this to be measured. Residents don't want heightened density downtown, but developers have more money than residents. We need to study the influence of developer donations on our city council and on the politics of our city. Please include that in the EIR. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia.
The plans that we worked on for 6 years, the LUS, the land use element, we worked very hard on it to protect our communities, to protect the areas that we live in. There are no big, tall buildings in my community, and there are never going to be anything like that on Ocean Park, because I live at Sunset Park. But the idea of LUS and the idea, and the smart idea, is to create a space where density is possible. The city is growing, and everything is becoming extremely expensive, and the traffic is difficult, and our children don't have an opportunity to come back to live here. And these are important issues to us. So I would say that I would like to see some excellent design for downtown. I would like to see architectural ideas that are iconic, that are going to be a pride to the city. I sit on the downtown board, and I must say that I don't like what I see downtown at this moment. And I would like to see more care. So one of the ideas that I thought of is that the community has to have a vibrant space, someplace. Downtown is the place. Our beach area is the place. So what we need is we need to address the EIR and find out if it's possible that any footprint of building that comes in is going to have only a footprint of 2/3 of the footprint, and the third would be for the public. Opportunities for the public to have a space, a garden, a place to rest. We have a lot of, if we have a lot of businesses built there, we need a place for people to be able to, during lunch hour or after, to rest. So circulation is a huge issue, no question.
Maria, could you wrap up in a minute or two? A minute, please.
Yeah, I will try my best. I would like in affordable housing that we're planning downtown to include artists live, work space. And that is possible if the design is done correctly. And most important is that we do plan for the future. The past is past, and it is gone, and it is going away, and we can hold on to it. But we can make the future better. And if we're very careful about how we plan it, we can have an exceptional city that we can all be proud of.
Thank you, Maria. Nina? And Nina's going to be followed by Mayera Rubens. I think it's Robbins, sorry, Robbins. Told you the glasses are at home. Carla Finnerman and Chris Klisa.
Hi. I have new glasses. It's not much better. In the framework, it refers to the 1984 plan as actively embracing our historic resources, and certainly the Downtown Specific Plan that is currently in place also talks a great deal about historic resources and lists them. But in the 1980s, we had 139 potential resources in downtown, and today we only have 88, 6 of which have been newly listed as they aged into the process. We have been losing historic resources a lot more quickly than we have even been able to designate them. We had 8 properties on Landmarks Commission's list of proactive designation possibilities in 2004, and we still have not completed that list. So our preservation policies for downtown, however beautifully stated in the documents, have not been very effective. And I think it's really important to study why that is. I think a lot of it has to do with that they depend on process and not policy. So if there's other things going on, like right now where there's so many DAs coming in, staff doesn't have time to get our applications going through the system and getting things designated. The framework starts talking about the historic setting of downtown using only those 88 remaining properties, not referring to the 50-odd ones that have been altered in some ways, but still give the size and massing and form that gives context to the other 88. And it says that it's going to suggest creating guidelines based on the historic properties that we have. And I would like to see what the difference is between guidelines based on the remaining ones, which tend to be the larger ones, because those are the ones that fit into today's programming a little more easily, rather than the smaller ones that tend to be redeveloped. So I think it's really important to really give us a real baseline on what these historic preservation ideas are going to really result in, and if it will really be in preservation. The other thing that came to mind also is the idea of the conservation district should really be in the whole downtown core area and not just on the 3rd Street Promenade, because those resources are evenly feathered and there's no reason to favor one street over the others. The whole core is what exemplifies that feeling for residents and tourists. The other thing that I wanted to touch on that Ms. Laird said, so I won't go into detail, is the whole facadectomy issue. Keeping facades or parts of buildings from those 50 buildings that are no longer on the inventory would be a great thing, because those pieces are already artifacts. But in historic preservation, we preserve buildings, not parts of buildings, not objects or artifacts, and we need to make sure that our policies and not just our processes are focused on that.
Thank you, Nina. Mayra? Myra, dang it.
Myra Robbins, that's okay. We thought you'd screw up on all the other names, so that's okay.
Very uniform that way.
I have a lot of concerns, and would you please include these in your study? I just made a whole list here. What if people don't follow this common urbanizing wisdom? What if the condos don't sell? What if the rents are priced out of reach for the average person? What if we become an unaffordable city? What if public transportation is not used as dreamed of, or loses funding and is never built? What if the new buildings are built right up to the sidewalk and it's not pedestrian friendly at all? What about our infrastructure, which doesn't even support us now? What if global warming depletes our water supply? And what if our waste and sewage system can't support another 20 or 30,000 residents, not to mention visitors? What if there's another earthquake, which was mentioned before, came right down Wilshire Boulevard and blew out all the windows? What if the Palisades Cliff can't handle the weight, the machinery, and the drilling? And what about the fig tree? What about the current 90,000 residents living here while all the massive construction is going on? What's the cost, both physically and mentally? You know, we have a huge senior population here, and it's not going away for a long time. What about the air quality? What about the industrial waste from all the development? What if the economy goes bust again? We're Santa Monica. We're not New York, Chicago, Long Beach, not even Los Angeles, which has been in the paper quite a bit lately. And we don't want to be. Most of the developers are not from here. And the only thing that's going on is the buildings are ugly and the developers want to make money. So we just need you to consider all these things. Thanks.
Thanks, Myra. Carla?
Next. Hello there. Thanks for listening to me. I was born here, and I spent most of my years playing here, and then I moved back here over 22 years ago. I'm hugely, hugely concerned with the welfare of my neighborhood. As I live 4 blocks from the proposed construction of the Miramar expansion. I'm really concerned about the air and noise pollution that this will create. It will be heard for blocks on end. The traffic and the lack of flow is frightening to me. It's horrible now. I have friends who live outside of the area that will not come here because they cannot travel to and fro wherever they come from, especially on the weekends. It's just horrendous already. And I cannot imagine what it will be like when the proposed California Incline Improvement Project goes into effect, and what that will have, how that will impact with the be impacted with the construction of the Miramar expansion, and how that will disrupt traffic even more so. I mean, that'll cut out a complete main vein of flow for traffic in and out of the city. So you might want to consider that. Nobody has mentioned that tonight, but it is proposed to improve that incline because it's severely in need of it. Another concern is the erosion. My mom, who recently passed away at the age of 78, was reminiscing with me how as a teenager she used to come with her friends and they'd climb down the what are now the bluffs. I believe they weren't bluffs at the time because I could not imagine her climbing down anything like that, but 60 years ago there was land there. The erosion of that land is extensive, and I cannot, in my wildest imagination, imagine the bluffs surviving the constant pounding and boring down 4 stories to build parking that close to that area of erosion. So that is a huge concern to me. And also the fig tree. I don't know if you have anything to do with that. Also, I cannot imagine that a tree that has developed a root system over a century plus will sustain being dug through. You know, they're claiming, oh, that tree is going to survive, and I can't imagine that it will. So we've got the impact of traffic, noise, air, and erosion. I speak for my neighbors and we don't want this to happen, especially on this level. So thank you for hearing.
Thanks so much for your comments. Chris, and let me call just a few folks before you go, Chris, okay?
Sure.
Aaron Donnelly, George Farrell, and Bruce Cameron. Bruce Cameron. Go ahead.
Thank you. You and your team have done a wonderful job in making this presentation. I want to thank you for that. What I want to address is quality of life. And I don't think that the EIRs in the past have, if they've been accurate, have addressed that. It seems to me, based on my limited experience, I've been here a long time, but I don't read a lot of EIRs, that they're kind of a whitewash for a go-ahead. And pardon me if I've offended anybody here. But the reason I say that is years ago, maybe 10, 15, when buildings started to ramp up and traffic started to get bad, I started to pay attention. And every time I went to City Hall on an EIR, I was told, well, the EIR says that the roads can handle the traffic. Well, what does that mean? The roads won't collapse? I mean, can the people handle the traffic? I don't think so. Should we have to handle the traffic? Should those hundreds of thousands of hours be lost every week for people coming in and out of town during rush hour? I don't think so. Who benefits? Big money. The 5% that control 90% of the wealth. Do they need more money? Should I give up my quality of life? Should we give up our quality of life so they can have more money? For what? It doesn't seem a workable, fair solution. Some cities seem content on not building. Some pass a moratorium on building, but not here. For some reason or other, Santa Monica is bound and determined to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. I'm not sure why that is. I'm assuming it has to be money. Now, this EIR, the lady who talked about that, God bless her, and I wouldn't want to have to address that issue, she said regarding vehicle congestion the EIR will look at it. Well, I can look at it. You know, I mean, and that sounds facetious, but I mean, they've looked at it in the past, and apparently they've said, well, it's fine. Well, it's fine to who? So at this point, that's all I want to say. You know, I don't think it's fair to the people to give up our quality of life so big money can make more money. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments. Aaron?
I'm just going to piggyback on what he said, which is my sense of feeling after living in Santa Monica for 20-plus years, and in that time watching the whole lifestyle change because of a few city council members who really aren't doing their job by listening to the people who elected them. And I think that the EIR should be really address the concerns of what everyone has expressed here tonight. One good thing I think all in our favor is that I understand that the majority of the council members' term limits are up in 2014. So we will have something to say about if they get reelected or not, because it's critical to us, to our lifestyles going forward, whether they're listening to their constituents. And it just doesn't appear that they are. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments, Aaron. George?
Good evening. I'm Jim Farrell. As far as the EIRs, I think we need different EIRs for different scenarios. The minimum would be building out under existing zoning and then be able to contrast that to building up the opportunity sites. The next comment deals with traffic and parking. Parking and traffic are already a problem. I can't conceive of how we could reduce parking requirements for new construction, and at the same time we have reduced the number of lanes on major streets, and then we're going to increase the population, and we're still going to have quality of life downtown with parking and traffic. To me, we're going down the rabbit hole. This is Alice in Wonderland kind of a reasoning. Next, I like to address the idea of the economic impact over time, and the impact on our physical resources, our economic resources in the city. I've heard people say that we need the fees from developers to maintain our city as it is now, to operate the city, and we also need the fees to improve the city. At the same time, I've read about other communities that have had large increases in development, but after about 20 years, they've found that the initial fees that they got are now gone, and they now have to maintain the fire department, schools, streets, lighting, sewers, and they're having trouble. They're struggling. I don't know if the impact report covers this, but I hope that it does. Looks out into the future. What's it like 20 years from now, 30 years from now, 40 years from now? As we increase the buildings and population, what changes will be needed in services? We're going to need more police officers. We're going to need more firefighters. We're going to need more sewers, more water, more, and then it's just going to have to be repaired. How much more will we need to pay initially? How much more will we need to maintain this increase over 30, 40, 50 years? How much are our kids going to be paying if our kids can live here? Will we be able to afford it initially? Will we have to keep selling our property year after year, decade after decade to maintain what we have, which is what's being proposed now? We have to sell off the city to maintain what we have or to have improvements.
Jim, could you wrap up, please?
All right, this is it.
Thank you so much.
All right. What I'm wondering about, is this a Faustian bargain? Yeah. Are we selling the soul of our community? What's the outcome? That's what I'm concerned about. Yeah,
Thanks so much for your testimony, Jim. We have 2 more speakers. I just have 2 speakers left, so anybody who hasn't filled out a speaker slip and hasn't spoken and wants to speak, the chits are in the back, on the back table. Bruce Cameron, followed by Steve Lynette.
Hi, Bruce Cameron. I want to speak, well, first off, let me make a comment about the loose generally. I worked pretty hard for a lot of years to get the loose passed, even through an election. And one of the key reasons we did that is because it protected 96% of the city. And I think that needs to be borne in mind. We allowed for some development in the downtown area, and the trade-off was so that we could keep it out of the neighborhoods. So I think it's important to note that a little bit of development in the downtown is being offset by no development in the neighborhoods. And I think that's, from my standpoint, that's a pretty good policy choice. Now, others may disagree, that's okay, but I agree with that policy choice. The second point I'd like to make is on historic preservation. I think you've heard eloquently from Carol, from Nina, from Ruth Ann, etc. In the downtown area, it's very rich in resource there. We're very slow in terms of recognizing it, and as a result, we're either losing some of it or we're getting it into this facadism, as I'll call it. But there's an underlying problem, and the underlying problem is that there's no economic incentive to keep our historic buildings. So what I would hope to see studied in this EIR is the transfer of development rights from historic properties to each and every one of the opportunity sites. You cannot get the extra height in an opportunity site without taking it from a historic resource. The benefits to the city in doing that is it actually ends up in that is 0 net new feet, because what is not developed on the historic property is developed elsewhere, but no more than that. As a for instance, if we want to save the post office, which ideally do, if we lose it, it gets torn down, and we get, I don't know what it's zoned for, 6, 8 stories. I don't want to see that 6 or 8 stories there. I want to see the post office building there. I want to see that WPA architecture there. I want that aesthetic. I want to see this mix in the downtown. It's important to me to see different architectural styles. It's important for those who follow after me, for the kids who are coming through, that they can actually live and breathe these different forms of architecture. So I'm proposing that for any opportunity site, that any additional footage over and above the 84 feet is a transfer from historic properties. They have to be designated as historic properties in order to be able to transfer, but that will provide an incentive, A, to keep our existing stock that has been designated, B, to provide an impetus for us to finally clear up some of this backlog in the inventory, and we can then have a truly holistic downtown that blends yesterday and today, both looking forward to tomorrow. Thanks.
Thank you, Bruce. Steve will be followed by Robert Goldstein. And that's the last speaker slip that I have.
Thank you. My name is Steve Lynette. I'm chairman of the Miramar Committee at 101 California Avenue. Forgive me, I came in here a little late. This is a point of fact. Is there, in fact, a final downtown specific plan in existence?
We have been delivered a framework plan from the city, and we are refining build-out numbers with the city before we launch on full analysis in the EIR.
Okay, well, if it's only a framework, and forgive my ignorance, how could there be an accurate environmental impact report if you don't know how big it's going to be? If it's going to be 10% more density, the same density, 50% more density, 75% more massing, how could there be an accurate EIR? That just seems to me we're putting the cart way before the horse here in an effort to shove this thing through. So that would be my first question. I think they should reconsider and wait till the Downtown Specific Plan is finalized before doing a draft of an environmental impact report. That being said, I would like to commend the staff for following the CEQA guidelines of the subjects that they're studying, and which is the way to go here, obviously. But I think looking over the notice of preparation, there are a few things that were left out or weren't emphasized. One is on aesthetics, which they talked about. The EIR should investigate not just public scenic views as called for in the notice of preparation, but all views, including private ones. The CEQA guidelines under aesthetics call for an analysis of any projects which would have a substantial adverse effect on any scenic vistas, not just public ones. So I think they should broaden the horizon of what scenic vistas are obscured, not just public views, number one. Number two, I know you talked about studying utilities, which is obviously called for, but there was no specific mention of electricity. I think that's a major problem that we have here. Over the last few years, there have been many power outages, many power interruptions, lasting anywhere from a few seconds, which throws off all our electronics, from computers to iPods to radios, whatever, plus several outages of several hours or more, which disrupt the day. So what I'm asking here is that City Hall, the city, I should say, should hire engineers and consult with Southern California Edison to analyze the effects of this project on our electrical system. Because we have sources at Southern California Edison who said that the electrical grid is not capable of supporting all this increase. This electrical grid, excuse me, was put in 50 years ago, way before we thought we'd have this much need for it. That's got to be investigated in depth. Number two, seismic and earthquake effects. Number three, I should say. When the city studies the risks of earthquakes, the study should be based on the most up-to-date and detailed geological seismic studies that are available. Just recently, studies about future seismic risks in Hollywood and Century City have been shown to be outdated and of little use. We should not make that same mistake here. Item 4, light and air. While they talked about light and air.
Is this the last item, sir?
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Just they should focus also on access to ocean breezes. They didn't talk about that, but that's important. They should do a study there. Finally, parking. Notice of preparation talks about traffic and circulation, but there's no mention of parking. And with any increases in density or massing, and every person that comes into the area, it's just going to make an intolerable parking problem even worse if possible. Thank you.
Thanks so much for your comments. Robert? Robert's the final speaker for tonight.
Hi, Robert Goldstein. I just had a technical question for you about what baseline you intended to use and whether that would, whether you would start with the maximum allowed growth under current zoning and then talk about potential impacts beyond that.
The typical mandate under CEQA was that we look at the existing physical environmental setting as the baseline for the proposed project, but we also can do analysis in the alternative of a variety of issues, the no project alternative, for example, build out under existing zoning. So I would suggest you express in writing what you would like the EIR to do, and we can consider that in the framework. But CEQA mandates that we look at the existing physical environmental setting at the time of issuance of the NOP. We do make some accounting for approved projects that are under construction, things like that, or in the pipeline. It's kind of a balancing act. But we don't say compare. In fact, the courts have specifically forbidden you to compare the project to what's allowed under existing plans. The courts have mandated we look at the existing physical setting. Now, the alternatives give you broader latitude.
Thank you.
Can you do it with a build-out, a full build-out with the current zoning? Can you do it, or is that?
We can do that under the alternative sections. That's the no project alternative. So I think that being said, folks, if there's any other questions about the process, I can take one more question, but I think we need to wrap up. All right, thanks so much for coming tonight. I appreciate all your patience and input.